Why do we listen? It might seem like an odd thing to ask because we listen to hear the other person or whatever we're listening to, right? Well, no, it's not quite that simple. In fact, we are always listening for something. Welcome back to the 6th of these videos looking at the key concepts in Do Sweat the Small Stuff. And yes, this one is all about our listening. What we listen to, what we listen for, and what we often unintentionally filter out. If you saw the last video, you'll already know that all of our micro interactions are influenced by a kind of invisible force made up of a huge range of factors, from our upbringing, our education, culture, family life, lived experiences, and so on. This force also affects what we hear and what we filter out. Now, it's fairly self-evident that being able to listen well is an essential skill as a leader because there's a very high cost when we don't. There's the blindingly obvious issue, which is that we miss stuff. Unnecessary mistakes are made and time is wasted. You'll miss the opportunity to learn if you aren't open to hear new information or feedback. You'll lose trust. If there are things you cannot or will not hear from your team, they'll stop sharing the things that are probably exactly what you need to hear. And above all, your relationships will suffer. We've all met those people who don't listen, and being unable or unwilling to hear some things is corrosive over time, and people won't stick around. Now, a lot of this isn't intentional. So in terms of our micro interactions, the job is to try and uncover our filters so that we can listen well in spite of them, so that we can still hear the things we need to hear through them. Because to be realistic, we'll never fully dismantle them. In the book, I take you through some exercises to explore what your filters are, to understand what you listen for. For example, do you listen for how to fix things? Do you listen for whether things are right or wrong? Do you listen for whether something is a waste of your time? Our filters aren't right or wrong. They're simply things that have developed over time that work for us, that have ultimately brought us success. Yet, at a certain point, that same thing becomes what gets in our way. Listening well, just like speaking well, requires us to bring our filter into our conscious mind in order to evaluate it. Much of our filtering happens subconsciously, in part through the brain's attempt to take shortcuts. We have a huge amount of information coming at us every day, far too much for us to take in. So our brain looks for situations that seem familiar, where we already know how something will go. It then listens for information that confirms that expectation and filters out or ignores anything that doesn't fit our preconceived story. It's a form of confirmation bias. But what it means is that if we're not aware this is happening, we are potentially filtering out new or conflicting information which may be exactly what we need to hear. Once you've done the work to understand what your filters are, the next step is to learn to listen through them. The first part of listening more intentionally starts on the inside, challenging what you know and challenging what you think you know, making a deliberate choice to listen generously, to assume positive intentions. It involves being responsible for your feelings, to minimise the chance that your emotional reactions get in the way of you hearing things. Then, beyond the inner work, there are many practical things we can do to improve our listening. Slow down. That's one of the most impactful things you can do. Also, choose to get interested. Take it as your responsibility to be interested in what the other person is saying, not their responsibility to be interesting. Remember, it's not usually about you, especially if you have a habit of making things about you. You can learn to listen actively, to allow silence and space, to learn to let go of the need to be in control of a conversation. Learn to listen to the whole person, not only what they're saying, but what they're not saying, their tone, volume, energy, emotion, posture, eye contact. Take care with these not to assume you know what this means, however. Be curious. Ask. Ultimately, improving your listening skills really comes back to intentional practice. to doing that inner work each day, owning what's on your mind that may get in the way of you listening well, and taking care with whatever control you exert over a conversation. So that's a little taster of what you can expect in the chapters around listening in the book. Next time, we'll look at how you, as a leader, set the tone, not only through your speaking and listening, but your habits, behaviours, energy, and even your presence. Understanding your non-verbal micro-interactions and the impact they have is no less important. I look forward to seeing you there.